For the second time in history, federal regulators have accused an American state of securities fraud, finding that Illinois misled investors about the condition of its public pension system from 2005 to 2009. In announcing a settlement with the state on Monday, the Securities and Exchange Commission accused Illinois of claiming that it had been properly funding public workers' retirement plans when it had not. In particular, it cited the period from 2005 to 2009, when Illinois also issued $2.2 billion in bonds. The growing hole in the state pension system put increasing pressure on Illinois' own finances during that time, raising the risk that at some point the state would not be able to pay for everything, and retirees and bond buyers would be competing for the same limited money. The risk grew greater every year, the S.E.C. said, but investors could not see it by looking at Illinois disclosures. In effect, that meant investors overpay for bonds of a lower value than they were made out to have, although the S.E.C. did not measure any loss in dollars, and it did not impose fines or penalties in Monday's settlement. Illinois agreed to a cease and desist order without admitting or denying the accusations. The charges put the state's pension system, generally thought to be the weakest of any state, back in the national spotlight. In his budget address last week, Gov. Pat Quinn, the Democrat, issued a clear warning that the system had to be fixed. Without pension reform, within 2 years, Illinois will be spending more on public pensions than on education, said Mr. Quinn. As I said to you a year ago, our state cannot continue on this path. Many states, counties and cities are struggling with shortfalls in their pension systems, and because large numbers of people now qualify to draw benefits, the expense is wreaking havoc with budgets. Still, securities lawyers are not predicting a wave of S.E.C. pension enforcement actions. The states are legal sovereigns, and federal securities regulators have much more power to police corporate wrongdoing than potential violations by the states and municipalities. The S.E.C. does have the power to step in when it believes that there has been a fraud, but that means meeting a tough standard of proof. Many of today's troubled public pension funds got that way through missteps that, while harmful, do not necessarily constitute fraud. Overly rosy investment assumptions, failure to take into account that Americans are living longer, and bad calls about how much benefits actually cost. The agency did send a signal that Monday's enforcement action would probably not be the last, however. Public pension disclosure by municipal issuers continues to be a top priority, said Elaine C. Greenberg, chief of the S.E.C.'s Municipal Securities and Public Pensions Unit, which was formed in 2010. Its first action against a state accused New Jersey of fraud that year in connection with pension disclosures that said a special reserve had been set up to pay for pension increases. The reserve was an accounting illusion, the New York Times had previously reported. In that case, as with Illinois, the S.E.C. has cited the harm done to the investors who bought the government's bonds, not the retirees whose pensions were at risk, or the taxpayers who found themselves expected to make outlays they never agreed to. The S.E.C.'s mission is to uphold the integrity of the capital markets, not to protect retirees or promote balanced budgets. Municipal investors are no less entitled to truthful risk disclosures than other investors, George S. Canellos, acting director of the S.E.C.'s Division of Enforcement, said in a statement. Time after time, Illinois failed to inform its bond investors about the risk to its financial condition posed by the structural underfunding of its pension system. The S.E.C. noted that Illinois had passed a law in 1994 allowing itself to put less than the required amount into its pension system each year. It is not the only state to have done so. For the next 15 years, Illinois issued annual reports showing that it was on track with its lawful schedule, even as it fell further behind the real-world amount needed to pay all current and retired public employees. By 2003, the state was so far behind that it issued $10 billion of bonds and put the proceeds into its pension funds to make them look flush. The main underwriter of those bonds, Bear Stearns, was later found to have made an improper payment to win the business, figuring in the corruption trial of a former governor, Rod Blagojevich. In 2005, the state passed another law, giving itself a holiday from making even the inadequate annual pension contributions called for by its 1994 schedule. It said it would offset the missing money with bigger contributions from 2008 to 2010, but then did not do so. By 2010, the reported shortfall of the pension system was $57 billion, and senior officials were warning that the system was at risk of breaking down completely. Illinois is one of a number of states where the teachers, state police and certain other public workers do not participate in the Social Security program, so they have no federal backstop in case the state system should fail. Republican members of Congress have issued a warning that they expect Illinois to seek a federal bailout for its pension system, and said they would oppose such assistance. In reaching its settlement, the S.E.C. said it had considered remedial acts by the state, including that Illinois had hired Disclosure Counsel in 2009 and made extensive corrections and amplifications in its financial reports. These steps clarified the state's financial position, but the legislature has yet to enact significant pension reform.